Switching on to the section of the neck, and we will take the posterior triangle. The posterior triangle of the neck is not actually posterior, but it is also called side of the neck. So it is situated like this. We know where the neck ends, the thorax starts. Neck ends at the upper border of the sternal notch and the clavicle. So this is the start of the thorax and end of the neck region. This is where the external occipital protuberance. From here the superior nuchal line comes up to the mastoid process. This is thyroid process, and here lies the external acoustic meatus, on which the external ear is present, and anterior and parallel to the ear lies the gland that is called the parotid. Parotid means parallel, otid means ear. Parallel to the ear is called parotid gland. So this is the side of the neck starting from the superior nuchal line. If the line is drawn up to the sternal notch, and another line from the external occipital protuberance to the clavicle. So this triangular area is called the posterior triangle, or what is called the side of the neck. So we will discuss the posterior triangle under the heading of boundaries, roof, contents, floor, and apply. We will go one by one. So regarding the boundaries, it is an intermuscular triangle. It lies between the two muscles. One is the sternocleidomastoid and another is trapezius. As it is triangular, so it has got an apex and a base. So base is formed by the middle one third of the clavicle. Middle one third. And apex lies at the superior nuchal line. At the junction of medial one third and lateral two third, this point is the apex of the posterior line, where two muscles are inserted. We all know that sternocleidomastoid is inserted on lateral two third of the superior nuchal line, and medial one third is for the origin of trapezius. So where two muscles they meet, that's from the apex. And apex is of two types. One is pointed, other is truncated. So where the apex is pointed, but in some individual, the insertion of the sternocleidomastoid is only limited to lateral one third only. Small, only lateral one third. Then a gap remains here. In these individuals, the apex is like this. A gap of the middle one third of the superior nuchal line is there, then such apex is called truncated. So two types of the apex may be there depending upon the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So this is the side of the neck that is called the posterior triangle. Regarding the boundaries, sternocleidomastoid's posterior border on the anterior boundary, posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid, and anterior border of trapezius on the posterior boundary. So this is how we explain the boundaries of the posterior triangle with the two muscles. Now comes the root. All the contents floor, they are all covered by the root. So in order to see the contents and the floor, we have to remove the roof of the posterior triangle. And the roof of the posterior triangle is formed by the skin covering it, the superficial fascia and deep fascia. So they are covering it. So during dissection of the posterior triangle, with the sharp scalpel we cut the skin from the apex to the base. Another cut on the skin we make along the clavicle, and we reflect the skin like this. So we have cut and reflected it. So when we cut the skin, now we have exposed the roof of the posterior triangle. When we remove the skin, below the skin what we will find? Superficial fascia. And what are the content of the superficial fascia? Fluid, areolar and yellow color fat. So when we remove the skin, we find everywhere there is a yellow color fat. If we are seeing the fat, it means we are seeing the second layer of the human body, that is the superficial fascia. And what is the third content? Third content is cutaneous, artery, veins, nerve, lymphatic lymph node. Cutaneous means cutis. Cutis means skin. So small artery, veins and nerves which have supplied the skin that we have reflected, they are just below it, lying embedded in the fat of the superficial fascia. So that is the all structures we see in the superficial fascia of the posterior triangle. In this fascia, number one thing is we see, which is usually not present everywhere in the human superficial fascia, is a muscle. And this muscle is called platysma. Platysma is the name of the muscle. It is a special muscle because it is subcutaneous. Sub means below, cutaneous means skin. Just reflecting and removing the skin, we can easily find a muscle that is called platysma. So when the muscle comes, 5 fingers comes: origin, insertion, action, nerve supply and apply. So whenever a node comes, right and short node on the muscle, it means you have to make 5 heading. The muscle may be small or big. So you have to go systematically, then you get the score or the mark. So origin of this platysma muscle is from the below upward, from the deep fascia covering the deltoid muscle that we have done in the upper limb, deltoid muscle, covered by the deep fascia. So that is the origin of the platysma muscle. Then the second muscle is the deep fascia covering the pectoralis major muscle. That is the origin of this muscle. Near the sternum, it takes origin from the deep fascia covering the second rib near the sternal angle. So that 3-point origin you have to write down. So that is the medial border, lateral border of the platysma muscle. So this thin subcutaneous muscle with running oblique fibers run upward and enter from posterior triangle to the anterior triangle. For insertion, it will cross the mandible of the face, and its medial fibers reach near the 1 inch behind the chin, and the opposite fibers they decussate behind the chin and they are inserted over the lower lip. The lateral fibers they go and inserted over the lateral angle of the lip or the mouth. So this is a thin subcutaneous muscle that is called platysma. And action or contraction of this muscle equalizes the border of the mandible with the neck. Regarding the blood supply, I have already told you it is supplied by cervical branch of the facial muscle, because this is also the muscle of exercise inserted on the skin of the face. Besides platysma muscle and the superficial fascia, second thing we see here is the external jugular vein. External jugular vein, first of all, is the formation. External jugular vein, we know there is a vein inside the carotid retromandibular vein. It comes out of the apex of the carotid gland and divides into anterior division and posterior. This posterior division will meet with a vein coming behind the ear. It is called the post-auricular vein. Both unite together to form the external, which runs obliquely over the sternocleidomastoid muscle and passes below the platysma, and where it terminates, 1 inch above the clavicle, it pierces the deep fascia and it will open into a vein that is deep vein, is subclavian vein, that we have done in relation to first rib, subclavian vein and artery. Now there a very peculiar thing happens here at its termination, that subclavian vein is a deep vein, it lies below the deep fascia. So this external jugular vein has to pierce the deep fascia to terminate into subclavian vein. So the opening in the deep fascia is same as the diameter of the jugular vein, and tunica externa of the external jugular vein get adherent to the deep fascia. So that happens at the point. Its clinical significance we will discuss later. So this is how the platysma and external jugular vein, they are present in the roof of the posterior triangle in the superficial. Besides this, there are also present sensory nerve or cutaneous nerve. So cutaneous nerves which are lying in the roof of the posterior triangle, they are actually the product of the cervical plexus, like we have done brachial plexus. Cervical plexus is formed by the C1, C2, C3 and C4 ventral rami of the spinal nerve. Like C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1 was the product of the brachial plexus. So from these C1 to C4, sensory or the cutaneous nerve they arise to supply the various part of the skin around the posterior triangle. The names of these nerves they are lesser occipital nerve, great auricular nerve, transverse cutaneous nerve of neck, and supraclavicular nerve. And all these nerves they carry the root values, as we have done the root values of the ulnar nerve, median nerve, and all the other nerves of the upper limb. Similarly, root value of the retrocipitral nerve is C2. This is C2, C3. This is again C2 and C3. This is C3 and C6. You have to remember because it will be asked in the Viva as well as in the theory paper. The root values of the various nerves. So names are suggestive. Names are telling that this cutaneous or sensory nerve will supply which area of the skin. First is the lesser occipital nerve. It means it supply a lesser means small area of the skin covering the which bone? Occipital bone. So above the menstrual process, this is the occipital bone. So skin covering of it will be supplied by this. So this is how you have to make the diagram. Starting from the posterior triangle, this nerve runs vertically upward and supplies the skin, smaller area of the skin behind the ear, covering the occipital bone. Because median to this part of the skin of the scalp is supplied by greater occipital nerve that we have done in the suboccipital triangle. This is lesser occipital. The smaller area of the skin is supplied by. And the second name is great auricular nerve. Go into the name. Why we have name? Great means large area. Auricular means ear or the pinna. So this nerve will supply the larger part of the skin of the external ear. That's why it is named great auricular nerve. So again, this nerve also arises in the posterior triangle. It will run upward and goes behind the ear and supply this part of the skin facing the skull or the cranium, and this area is the lateral surface of the skin. So greater part of this area of the skin will be supplied by great auricular. Besides, it also supplies the posterior and the lower part of the lateral surface. Mostly, that's why its name is great auricular nerve. Third name is transverse cutaneous nerve of the neck. The name is telling that this nerve, after arising, runs transversely or horizontally, crossing the posterior triangle and enters into anterior triangle. When it enters into the anterior triangle, this nerve will divide into two branches, ascending and descending. And ascending branch will communicate with the cervical branch of facial nerve. Resonance moves within them. And then branches arise, it supplies the skin of the anterior tendon. Whether it is cutaneous, it is sensory, S for S, that supplies skin. Similarly, the descending branch goes up to the sternal notch, and it will also supply the skin of the anterior triangle up to the sternal notch. So this is how the starting and the termination you have to write down of every nerve whenever it comes. The course of the nerve is very important. The last nerve is called supraclavicular nerve. As the name suggests, supraclavicular means this nerve will go above the clavicle. So it is a descending branch and it goes downward, and in the lower part it divides into three branches: a medial, a intermediate, and a lateral branch. Three branches divided: supraclavicular with root value C3 and C4, and it will supply the, after crossing the clavicle, it supplies the skin of the upper part of the chest, because this area is too much. Starting from sternum up to the shoulder, it has to divide into how many branches? So that whole of the skin is covered. That is the motive. Why it has been divided into three branches? To cover whole of the skin of the sensory area. Now its intermediate branch sometimes is important. Usually it passes above the clavicle. But in some individuals, this nerve passes through the clavicle. Intraosseous course. It pierces the bone and then comes out of the clavicle, then supplies the bone. In some individuals. And it passes through that point in the middle branch, the same area of the bone where fracture is very, very common. We have done the upper limb, you know, where the fracture of the clavicle is most important or most common. There it is, and the junction of medial to lateral. Same is the point from where this nerve pierces, the intermediate branch, only one. So that is the clinical importance. Usually the fracture of the clavicle is silent because it is a long bone lying horizontally. So whenever there is a fracture of the clavicle, patient doesn't feel the pain because it is a horizontal position. It's not non-weight bearing bone. So patient came to know about the fracture of the clavicle in the morning when he is taking bath. When he put the soap there, he will see that there is some swelling. The swelling will tell that something has gone wrong. But when this condition is there, in which the intermediate branch is passing through the fracture because of the nerve which is sensitive. So sensitive nerves, they are like the electric wires. As you touch the wire, you got the current. Same is in human being. Sensory nerves, they are painful whenever they are cut or pressed or injured. So in this case, patient immediately feel the pain of the fracture of the clavicle. So that is the clinical importance of supraclavicular nerve intermediate. So this much is visible in the superficial fascia of the posterior triangle. Then comes the deep fascia. Now, as you know, the deep fascia is the deep cervical investing layer of the deep fascia. It is investing layer of deep fascia. In the investing layer of the deep fascia, it invests the muscle. That's why it's called investing layer of the deep fascia. sternocleidomastoid muscle is taken in from sternum means sternum from sternum. Cleido means clavicle. Medial one side. So this is the origin of sternocleido from sternum and clavicle. Then this muscle goes up, and other name is sternocleidomastoid. So it goes to the mastoid and is inserted on lateral two-thirds of superior muscle line. So this is the sternocleidomastoid muscle. And medial one-third is origin of trapezius, which is inserted below on the lateral one-third of clavicle is the insertion of trapezius. So this is the posterior triangle, intermuscular, the apex and the middle one-third of clavicle. So the same deep fascia which is covering the anterior triangle comes on the lateral medial border of the sternocleidomastoid. So this is the deep fascia, the cervical fascia. And on the medial border, this deep fascia is split into two lamina, superficial and deep. Both superficial and deep to the muscle, covering it, investing it, and both the layers comes on the posterior border. And again, these two borders, two lamina or two layers of the deep fascia, they meet together to form a single sheet of deep fascia. And this single sheet of deep fascia forms the roof of the posterior triangle. Now this single sheet from the sternocleidomastoid goes towards the trapezius. And at the anterior border of the trapezius, it again splits into two layers. Invest the trapezius. Superficial, one layer goes superficial to the muscle, other goes deep to the muscle. And cover the muscle. In between the two muscles, it forms the roof of the posterior triangle, because in the roof we have seen the fascia is also this part. So this is the roof. So this is how we have done the skin and the superficial and deep fascia, they form the roof of it. Now we got to see the content. In order to see the contents, we have to remove the roof. So we have removed the skin, we have removed the nerve, we have removed the predetermined superficial external nuclear gain. So when we remove it, everything, now the deep. If you want to see the contents, now we will cut the deep fascia along the posterior border of the sternocleidomastoid and one from the clavicle content. And we refract. Literally, now we remove the deep fascia. So when we remove the deep fascia, the contents are visible. In the contents, what we see? A obliquely running nerve coming out of the sternocleidomastoid and entering into the kidney. Obliquely running. This is the 11th cranial nerve, which is the nerve supply of these both muscles. And what is the name of the 11th cranial nerve? What is the name? Accessory. You know all the names of the all 12 cranial nerves?
Yes.
Formula to remember? So this is the accessory nerve. After supplying the sternocleidomastoid, it comes out of its posterior border and enters the anterior border of trapezius, and it ends or terminates by supplying this large trapezius muscle. So that is visible just below the roof. In the lower part, we see a obliquely running muscle. This is the inferior belly of the omohyoid. inferior value of the omohyoid we have done in the scapula. This inferior value take origin from superior border of the scapula, just near the suprascapular notch. So that muscle is seen in the lower part. And because of this muscle, the posterior triangle is divided into upper larger and small lower triangle. The upper larger triangle is called occipital triangle, and this smaller one called subclavian triangle. Or as like just above the clavicle is also called supraclavicular triangle. The two triangles are created because of the presence of the inferior valley of the omohyoid. And in the lower part, there is also present the first rib. And structure related to the first rib you already know. So that becomes the contents of the posterior triangle. Number 1 is the 11th nerve. Number 2 is the first rib with its attachment. And what is touching the first rib you already know. Subclavian artery posteriorly and subclavian vein anterior. With all its branches, dorsal scapular, suprascapular, branches of the pyrocervical, all are present in the contents. Then the muscles attached to the first rib lateral border. This muscle is attached scalenus medius, and one more muscle lateral to it, going to insert on the second rib below. It is scalenus posterior muscle. So scalenus medius and posterior muscle, they are also the contents, along with the subclavian artery and subclavian vein. Then below, in relation to the subclavian artery, there lies the anterior to the scalenus medius muscle, the brachial plexus with its trunk T5, T6, T7, T8 and T1, all going towards the upper limb. All are visible here. So upper part of the brachial plexus is also the content. Upper trunks are visible. Scalus anterior is not included because it lies below the sternocleidomastoid. Underline. Then the nerves which we have seen in the superficial fascia, actually they all lie below the deep fascia. After piercing the deep fascia, they come to the skin. All the roots can be seen here. Ventral occipital, great auricular nerve winds down the lower part of the accessory nerve and reaches the ear. Transverse cutaneous nerve also coming from the middle of the posterior part of the sternocleidomastoid, dividing to ascending and descending branch, and supraclavicular nerve with all its anterior, medial, intermediate and lateral branch. So they are also the content you have to include branches of cervical plexus. So this is the how we see the all the contents of this. Okay. posterior triangle. Now when we remove it, because we want to see now the flow. When we see all structures and remove it, now we see the flow of the, and this flow of the posterior triangle is again formed by the various muscles. The muscles from above downward, they are the semispinalis, capitis. Second it is splenius capitis, is the name of the second muscle. Third is levator scapulae. And fourth are the scalenus medius and posterior and omohyoid. So this is how we have to make the diagram also whenever the diagram comes. This is semispinalis capitis. Next is splenius capitis. Then the levator scapulae. Crossed by omohyoid, scalenus medius, and so this is how you have made the floor of the posterior triangle. Now last part comes is the applied anatomy of the posterior. So applied is related to the various contents. First applied is of the platysma, tetanus. Now we all know the tetanus is the disease of toxin released by Clostridium cell. And what is the ill effect on the human body? On the skeletal muscles. All skeletal muscles of the body from head to toe, because of this toxin, they undergo spasm. What is spasm? It is the sustained or continued state of muscle contraction. All skeletal muscles of the human body, they undergo spasm. They become small. Muscles of mastication, they become small. Patients come with the lockjaw. All the muscles of the back, they undergo spasm. All of the body is stiff. Same in the platysma. So when the bilateral platysma muscle undergo spasm, the lower leg, because it is inserted on the lower leg, so lower leg is pulled down. And if you see the face of the tetanus patient lying on the bed, if you see only the face, you can diagnose that he or she is suffering from tetanus because of the stretching of the lower leg and the lockdown. And it appears because it is a muscle of expression. So when you see the look at the face of the patient gives the look of the sarcastic smile. That is called risus sardonicus. It appears that patient is smiling, but he is not smiling, he is dying actually. So therefore it is called sarcastic smile. So that is again the platysma is helping the diagnosis. Second is the external jugular vein. No doubt it is a very thin and small vein, but it is very important clinically. 5 or 6 points you have to elaborate whenever a question comes the external jugular vein. Number 1 is the hemorrhage. So this nerve, this vein, when it is lying just below the skin, and it is very easily cut in the roadside accident or bullet injury or the cut injury. Then the bleeding is very profuse. Why? Because this tunica externa is adherent to the deep vein. So vein doesn't collapse. After cutting, it remains open, same as we have done in the second layer of the scalp. It remains open after cutting because here it is adherent, and blood will come and out. Patient will die in this. So hemorrhage is very much profuse because of the adherence. Secondly, if the roadside accident is there, patient is lying on the road, extrajugular vein is cut, either he will die at the spot if no immediately authorization is done, or what happens, any yellow color particle of the fat can go into the vein. Open vein, any fat particle can go. Atmospheric air bubble can go inside the vein because it is open. Any dust particle from the road can go inside into our circulation. And these small particles, the air, fat, and foreign body, all are called embolism. What is embolism? Running small particles of the fat or air or foreign body in the bloodstream is called embolism. And what they cause? They ultimately cause the obstruction of the blood vessels. So they will scatter in the whole of the human body once they enter into the heart. And that will lead to the multiple organ failure and patient will die. So that's why that is the clinical importance of this small vein. Another importance is the JVP, jugular venous pressure. Sometimes the cardiac surgeons or the physicians, they require the pressure in the right atrium, where is superior vena cava occurs. So we prefer the right jugular vein, external jugular vein, and we measure the pressure there. We have not to go into the right atrium. So whatever pressure is in the right external jugular vein, same will be in the. So that's why this vein is used for measuring the JVP. Then another condition is right heart failure or congestive heart failure. Right heart failure means when right atrium and right ventricle, they are not contracting to pull their blood to the pulmonary artery. It means right atrium and ventricle, they are not getting calculated. So in that case, what happens? The blood will flow back from right ventricle to right atrium to tricuspid valve. From right atrium it will go to superior vena cava, and from superior vena cava it will go to the brachiocephalic vein into internal length. Usually this vein is not visible in normal people. In normal people, this vein, bluish vein, is visible only when we are doing some exercise or we are exerting. But if you find a person at rest and vein is visible, it means he or she is suffering from right heart. Just by seeing the neck of the patient and a blood-filled, thick, congested vein, external jugular vein, can diagnose the disease. So that is the clinical importance of the small superficial external jugular vein. One thing we have already done in this scalp, shunt operation. What was shunt operation? So this vein is also important for neurosurgeon because this vein is used from the anterior fontanella to shunt the CSF into the which vein? External jugular vein. So shunt operation is done in the hydrocephalus that we have already covered. That this vein is also useful for cardiac surgeons, for cardiac catheterization. So, in order to put the to visualize the interior of the right atrium or tricuspid wall or right ventricle. So cardiac surgeons, they cut the external jugular vein and they put a wire or a catheter. Then camera is attached to the anterior end of that catheter, and this wire ultimately goes to the jugular vein cava into right atrium. And a screen will attach there, and on the screen it all comes the interior of the right atrium, tricuspid wall, its cusp, its capillary muscles, body bending, all are visible on the screen. So this procedure is called cardiac catheterization. Even to see the visualize the SA node damage or to permanent implantation of the pacemaker, we want this way. So whenever question comes, you have to elaborate these 6 points. So write down these 6 points, they are not given in your book. All 6 points you have to explain thoroughly. 1 point, 1 page. Then you get the marks. So that is how to attempt the question of external jugular vein. But note down these 6 points. Another appliance related to the posterior triangle is the torticollis. What is torticollis? Word means turtle neck deformity. Have you seen the turtle? Its neck is not straight, it is always tilted. So they call it tilted or the wry neck. So it is related to the accessory nerve actually. So accessory nerve, as we know, it is lying very superficially, very thick nerve, just below the skin and deep in here. So this nerve lies obliquely here. During winter what happens? The cold wind blows, and if you are not wearing the high neck sweater or you are not covering your neck with the muffler, your accessory nerve will be exposed to the cold wind. Due to exposure, what happens? The nerve will be irritated. And when the nerve is irritated, what will happen? The muscle supplied by them is also irritated. So both sternocleidomastoid and trapezius undergo irritation. And how the muscle show their irritation? Again by heart. So both sternocleidomastoid and trapezius on that side become stiff. And sometimes most of the you have experienced this during winter, that when they undergo spasm, you cannot turn your neck, you have to turn whole of your body like this. Have you experienced? So this is your accessory nerve. That's why our grannies and grand people say that cover your neck with the muffler or you wear the high neck sweater, that is the high neck comes up to it. And you cover the accessory. They know what is accessory. They know the anatomy, they know where it lies. That's why they are advising you to cover your neck. So that is the turtleneck. Second is, this is called spasmodic turtleneck. Second is cut injury or bullet injury. So bullet comes and goes here, but it tears the nerve. So tearing or the cut size accident in the accidental injuries, again both the muscles undergo paralysis. The nerve is cut. It is a motor nerve. And when the nerve is cut, the muscle becomes paralyzed. Other side is okay. Other side muscle, they are okay. Then your neck will be tilted off. So this is the position of the cutting of this. You might have seen the people like this on roadside or in the bus stand or in this side. In the movies also sometimes it is visible. What they are suffering from? Certain neck due to some accidental or or there is a congenital torticollis. During difficult vaginal delivery, in which pelvis is small and head of the baby is large, then pulling of the baby out of the pelvis may overstretch the accessory nerve. So there is a tearing of the accessory. Again, the baby is born with the cut of the accessory nerve. So whole of the life, the neck of the baby will remain tilted on the so that is congenital. So these are the conditions related to the paternity. Then potato tumor. Sometimes it's difficult vaginal delivery, accessory nerve is not damaged, but the sternocleidomastoid is overstretched due to the pulling. In this case, what happens? Because of the overstretching of the muscles they are rich in blood supply. So bleeding is there inside the muscle. Blood comes, and we know whenever blood comes out of the vessels undergo clotting, whether inside or out. So this blood is clotted in the muscles and it forms a potato-like swelling and baby is born. This is called hematoma. Heme means blood, toma means like a tumor. So a baby is born with a swelling here. Again, the baby is like this because muscle is long. Turtle and deformity. But this is reversible. Surgically, we can remove the hematoma, we repair the muscle and it becomes normal. So that is all. So these are the related structures of the whenever a person comes right and out of the torticollis. Then you have to elaborate your answer. Another is the Virchow lymph node. Virchow lymph node is a single lymph node lying at the termination of the thoracic duct. You know thoracic duct is at the junction of left internal jugular vein and left subclavian. You have done in the thorax, 45 centimeter long thoracic duct. Where terminate at the junction here. And here at the junction there is a Virchow lymph node, a single lymph node is there. And this lies somewhere here. Virchow lymph node, write down, is not given in your book. It is not even in the thoracic duct. At the termination of the thoracic duct, a single lymph node is called Virchow node is supraclavicular, left side only. And if any patient comes with a swelling of this lymph node, and if this lymph node is enlarged and stony hard, like a stone, what it signifies? That patient is suffering from malignancy of any of the organ of the abdomen or thorax. It is a very important diagnostic lymph node. Virchow lymph node. Then the hemorrhage and death due to lymph node biopsy. So below the deep fascia, in relation to the blood vessels, there are also present deep cervical lymph nodes. In relation to the subclavian artery and its vessels. All lymph nodes are present also around the external jugular vein, superficial group of cervical. So sometime in order to diagnose the cancer, we want to take a small piece of the lymph node, that is called biopsy, either from the deep or cervical. So surgeon should know the relation of the veins and vessels with the lymph node. Otherwise, by mistake, for the removal of the lymph node, he may cut or injure the blood vessel. And patients usually die due to the hemorrhage. Ultimate relation of the lymph node with the vessels should be kept in mind by the surgeon. So this is how we elaborate the various applied anatomy related to posterior.